Hi, this is Simon from Tokyo Productions and welcome to another tutorial for Motion 5. And today we're going to be looking at creating this volumetric lighting effect. And volumetric lighting is the effect that you get when light passes through an atmosphere that has dust, particles, or smoke, or fog, or water vapor, just as in this instance. And that allows you to see the path of the light. So let's dive in and get started. I've got a project that is 1920-1080, 24 frames a second, and the duration is 15 seconds. I'm going to start off by creating a background. So come to the library, Command 2, Generators. I'm going to select Color Solid, and I'll apply that. Hit F4 to come to its controls, select the color, and drag that all the way down to black. And we'll call this background. We'll twirl it closed and we'll lock it. Not an essential step, but it's good practice to have a solid background. So the next step is to create a floor. So let's make a new group, Command-Shift-N, come back to the library, Command 2, and we're going to select checkerboard and apply that. F4 to come to its properties. I'll select color 1, and I've got a preset swatch here that's a nice dark desaturated blue, and we're going to use that. I'm going to set its width and height to 4000 pixels, so 4000 by 4000. I'm going to hit F1 to come to its transform. I'm going to move it back to -1000 pixels on Z, and I'm going to rotate it through -90 degrees on X. Now we need to add a camera so we can see what we're doing. So let's hit Alt-Command-C and switch to 3D. F1 for its transform. I want to set a Z position of -500 and an X rotation of -10 degrees, so we can look down on the floor. I also just want to add a behavior so we can move around this scene quite easily. So Command 2 to come to the library, come to behaviors, select camera, and we'll select sweep, and we'll apply that. And we'll hit F2 to come to its the behavior properties. We'll set a start position of -45 and an end position of 45. And as you see, that allows us to sweep round the scene. Next, I want to make a cutter for the pool. So I'm going to select my group, which I'll call room, and I just want to quickly turn it back to 2D as I make my cutter so everything lines up. So Control D will turn it back to 2D. Control D. Next I'm going to select the rectangle tool by pressing R, and I'll draw a rectangle roughly like that. Doesn't have to be accurate at this point. F1 to come to its transform, and we'll hit the reset button here to center it up. F4 to come to the shape properties and geometry. And what I'm going to do is for points 1 to 4, I'm going to enter some exact values. So I have a square that's 400 by 200. I'm going to start with -400, tab to the next field, 200, tab, 400, tab, 200, tab, 400, tab, -200, tab, -400, tab, -200. So now I've got a precise rectangle, and it's always a good idea to use exact numbers when you're working with geometry that locks together. So F1 for its transform, and we'll rotate it through -90 on X as we did with the checkerboard. Let's switch the group back to 3D by hitting Control D. Let's select the checkerboard and we'll add an image mask, and we'll use Command Shift M to do so. We'll take the rectangle and drag it into the image mask, and we need to hit Invert Mask to swap it around and cut a hole in the floor, just like that. I'm going to take that rectangle and I'm going to rename it Cutter, because we're going to be using it quite a lot. In fact, we're going to use it straight away because I want to make an edge to the pool. So let's hit Command D. I'll call this Pool Edge, and I'll turn it on. So I'll come to the style for that shape, click on the fill color, and I'll select that same dark blue. F1 for its transform, and I want to scale it by 110 on X and 120 on Y. And I also want to add an image mask to it, so Command Shift M, and again we'll drag the cutter into the image mask and invert it. And now we've got an edge to the pool. Okay, so our next step is to build the internal geometry of the pool. And to do that, I'm going to take the cutter and duplicate it, so that's Command D. And I'm going to turn it on by hitting its Hide Show button. I'm going to rename it Pool Back. Come to the Style, Fill Color, and I've got a nice pale blue here, and I'm going to use that. And I need to come to F1 for its transform, and I'll set a Y position value of -200, a Z position of -200, and I'll zero out that X rotation, and that pops that at the back there. In actual fact, what I now want to do is, so we can see the geometry better, is add a light, otherwise it won't look plausible. So let's hit Command Shift L. That adds a light. Let's set its Y position to 200 and its Z position to 0. And let's just crank the intensity up to 400 just so we can see a bit better. Okay, let's take Pool Back and duplicate it, Command D, and we'll call it Pool Left. F1 to come to the transform. We need to do a bit of rotation and translation, so -400 on X, -400 on Y, 0 on Z. The Y rotation we'll set to 90 and the Z rotation to 90. That pops it in on the left hand side of the pool. We'll duplicate that, Command D, we'll call it Pool Right, F1 for its transform, and we simply need to enter a value of +400 on X to pop that onto the other side. Now we need to make the base of the pool, so in order to do that we'll use the cutter again, Command D, we'll turn it on, we'll rename this Pool Base, F1 for its transform, and we need to set a Y position value of -40, just to drop it down a little bit to simulate the surface of the water. F4 for the shape, style, click on the fill color and select that same pale blue, and we've now got a water surface. Next we're going to add some water texture, and to do that we're going to come to the library, Command D, come to Generators, and we'll come to Clouds and select that, apply that. F4 for its controls. We will twirl open the gradient. We'll throw away this left-hand color tab. That's just drag it away. We'll click on this top bar here, which is the opacity control, And that makes a new tab, and we'll drag that all the way to the right. We'll click on the left tab, set the opacity all the way down to 0, and down here where it says location, we'll type 35%. Then I just want to reset the horizontal and vertical scale to 12. F1 for its transform, and I want to set a Y position of minus 39. Sorry, I've done minus 0.39. It should have been minus 39. And that sits it just above that pool base. That's 1 pixel above. Okay, and I also want to apply the image mask to it, the cutter rather. So add an image mask, a Command-Shift-M, drag the cutter into the image mask just to cut it to shape. Next I want to add a little bit of movement to those clouds, a bit extra movement I should say. So I'll come to the library, Command-2, come to Filters, Distortion category, I'll scroll right to the bottom and I'll select Underwater and I'll apply that. F3 for the filter controls. So we'll set a size of 0.2 and a speed of 0.2. And that adds a little bit of movement to the water, but I want to make it a little bit more complex. So what I'll do is I'll duplicate that underwater filter, and I'll reduce the size to 0.1 and the speed to 0.1. And that will just give me a bit more complexity of detail in there. And then I want to add some caustics. So let's come to the library, Command-2, come to the generators, and we'll select caustics and apply that. F4 for its controls. We'll set a size of 0.1 and we'll set the refraction to 200, and the brightness will crank all the way up to 50. And F1 for its transform. We want to position this at minus 38, so it's 1 pixel above the clouds, and rotate it through minus 90 on X. And obviously we also need to apply the image mask, so Command-Shift-M, and we'll use the cutter to cut it out. You know what I've done? I've entered the wrong Y value again there, so it should be minus 38, as I'm sure you realize, not 0.38. Typing in the dark here. Okay, so that's the caustics added. Let's just change its blend mode to linear dodge, and that'll brighten it up. Okay, now I want to create some reflections, caustic reflections on those side walls. So let's take that caustics, hit Command-D, and let's call it caustics back. F1 for its transform. I want to zero out that Y value. I want to enter a Z value of minus 199 and zero out that X rotation. And that's just pushed it to the back there. F4 for its controls, and I want to reduce that size down to 0.05. Let's duplicate it again, Command-D, call it caustics left. F1 for its transform. Let's set an X value of minus 399, and we just want to set the Y rotation to 90 degrees. Let's now duplicate that, Command-D, call it caustics right, F1 for its transform, and set an X value of 399. So it's sitting on the right-hand edge. Sorry, right-hand edge. Let's come to the light and maybe just turn that down a bit because it's blinding us a bit. Let's come to 200 and we'll see that pool a bit better and those caustic reflections on the side. I think I might select all three of those caustics, and Might just reduce the level down to about 75%, I think. There we go. Okay, so that's our pool and our water done. So the final bit of geometry that we need to create is the spotlights that run round the edge of the pool. So I'm going to come up here and make a new group, Command-Shift-N. I'm going to set it to 2D by hitting Control-D. I'm going to select the Circle tool by hitting C. Call up the HUD by hitting F7. Turn on the outline. The fill color I want to be very slightly yellow. And the outline, let's bring it down till we've got a dark grey. And a width of about 10 is probably right. Close up the HUD, and holding down the Shift key, I'll draw out a circle, like so. Then I'll come to the transform, and just for tidiness sake, I will hit the reset button there. Center it up. So L to make a replicator. Come to its replicator controls, leave the shape at rectangle, but let's set the arrangement to outline. To open the size here, I'm going to set the width to 1000 and the height to 600, and I'll have 16 points. Then I want to hit F1 to come to its transform, and I'm going to rotate it through -90 on X. So then I'll hit Control-D to make the group 3D, and those pop into the scene very nicely. Let's call that group Spots, and we'll drag it inside the room. There we go. So I just want to very quickly adjust the position of the camera, so a little bit further out. I'm going to set that to 0. And now earlier on I made the mistake of telling you to move the checkerboard to -1000. That wasn't correct, so just let's 0 that out. And that's taken care of that front edge. Sorry about that. Right, now we want to start making the exciting part, which is the rays. So we need to assemble a group that contains the spots and the caustics. So what I might actually just do is take that spots group and drag the original caustics, let's call it caustics source. We'll drag that into the spots group. Close that up, and we'll duplicate it, Command-D, and we'll drag that out above everything else. And we're going to call this group Rays. Let's twirl it open, and you'll see I've got my caustics and my spots in there. Like that, and they're going to be the light source for the rays. And the effect we're going to be using to create them is light rays. So come to the library, filters, glow, and apply the light rays filter to that rays group. And I'll hit F3 to come to the inspector. Now I need to be very careful here. While I was preparing this tutorial, I was endlessly being frustrated because I was trying to adjust the light rays while this group was set to 3D, and there's some kind of bug that means it'll keep crashing if you do that. So let's set a group to 2D by hitting Control-D, and now we can adjust the light rays properties. I'm going to set an amount of 100. I'm going to twirl open this center here, and into that Y value I'm going to type -3. Now if I turn that group back to 3D by hitting Control-D, you'll see the beginning of the rays. But you'll also see that there's a problem, which is that the rays are built up of slices, and when we look at them side on like this, although it's convincingly 3D, they're not convincing as rays. So let's sort that out by adding another filter. Come to the library, Command-2, come to the blur section, and we will select directional blur and we'll apply that. F3 to come to the inspector. We'll set an angle of 90 degrees, and if we set the amount to 75, you'll see that that's smoothed out those rays and created a much more acceptable looking effect. And you'll see those rays are genuinely 3D. Now they're not very strong at the moment, and we can adjust that by adding another filter. So we come to the library, color correction, and we're going to use Open EXR Tone Map, and we'll drag it in just below the light rays like that, and hit F3 to come to the inspector. Now the really nice thing about this filter, Open EXR Tone Map, is that it allows us to push the values well above 100% of luminance. So if I crank that up, you can see that's giving me really nice bright result. I think I'm going to stick with a value of 6. That's going to be enough for now. So you'll see that the directional blur has pushed the blur down below where it ought to be, because it works in both directions. So we can just adjust that by coming to the rays group, coming to its transform and setting a Y value of +10. And that just pushes them up enough to keep it plausible. So if you remember our caustics, if we hit F4 to come to its properties, is a white source color. So let's just click on that and let's set it to our pale blue and maybe increase the saturation so we get a really nice blue coming off the pool. There we go. So a couple of extra things I now want to do just to make it look a bit more elegant. What I want to do is to create a glow around the edge of the pool. So I'm going to take that pool edge, which was in my original room group. I'm going to duplicate it, Command D, and I'll call it Pool Glow. And what I want to do is come to its fill color, select that pale blue, and I want to set the feather to 150. F1 for its blend mode. Let's set that to screen, and let's set the opacity down to 20. And if I toggle that on and off, you'll see that that helps to create the illusion that there is light being spilled out around the pool. What we also need to do is to crank up the brightness of those spots. So let's come to that spots group, let's select the replicator and we'll duplicate it. So Command D, F1 for its blend mode, and I'll set that to add. And that's brightened that up. And I want to come to the library, filters blur, and I'll add a Gaussian blur to that. F3 for its controls. Let's have an amount of 30. And that just makes that look as though they're glowing. Okay, so just to finish off, I've adjusted the camera path so we come down from up here and crank around to the other side and get a lot closer. You can adjust that really however you choose, because the whole thing is genuinely 3D and you can move around it pretty much as you choose. I just want to add some text, so I've already got that preset and I will add that from my favorites menu. Well worth getting used to the favorites menu, very, very handy. Let me pull in the volumetric text. I just need to make it 3D. Control D. F1 for its transform. Move it back into the path of the light, so -50. And that's looking quite nice. And one other thing I want to do is I'm going to make a new group, Command-Shift-N. Come to the favorites menu, and I've set up some volumetric particles. And I'll add those in. And if we zoom in, you'll see I've added those into the path of the light there. Turn those on and off. That really helps to add to the 3D effect, because my particle emitter is a box shape, which gives me 3D depth to those particles, so we actually see them from the side as well as just the front. So it's a really nice feature that gives added 3D depth. Okay, so here's the final render of that project. I hope this has been useful and shown you how you can create your own volumetric scenes. Needs a little bit of trickery, as I say, but I think the results are fairly convincing, and I hope you have fun with it. So thanks very much indeed for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.